Today I'm excited we got Jeffrey here who's going to chat through with you about a utility he's been working on that utilizes our API to do some data transfer. He's been a Macintosh platform architect at a Fortune 500 financial services company. Previous to that, he spent 6 years as a Mac engineer in the government space and 8 years consulting. So with that, please welcome Jeffrey to the stage.
All right, well, it's great to be here, everyone. This is my fourth JNUC, my second time speaking, and there is a lot of interest in the API here. This is pretty cool, or maybe these are just the most comfortable chairs to take a post-lunch nap in. I'm not sure, so we'll see how this goes. I'm from Virginia. I literally live on the Blue Ridge Mountains. My property is adjacent to the Appalachian Trail, so the porch on the or the rocker on the porch kind of makes me feel right at home, so this is pretty cool. I'm here with a few colleagues of mine, some of the greatest coworkers in the world. There they are, Travis and Matt, awesome engineers. And Jeremy might be here somewhere. I don't know if he's here. There he is. Love working with these guys, and I'm honored to be here with them. So today, I want to go through this utility I created called the JSS migration utility and some related tools. And today we're going to explain some use cases for using a different migration strategy when a database restore just isn't an option for you. And we'll do a video demo of the utility. And along the way, we'll pick up a few tricks in coding API in Bash. And I'd love it if some people end up collaborating on the project on GitHub too. That would be awesome. First, big kudos here before I get started. These web pages were very helpful to me, especially Bryson's page. I don't know, how many of you have checked out Bryson's page before? I would have been lost without it. Until I actually saw his code snippets in action, I was lost with the API and found his page, and it was life-changing. And then Mike M has some cool scripts on his GitHub repo, and of course, Jamf support. I didn't really use any of their code exactly, but just got some inspiration from them. But check those out, good stuff. So first of all, JSS migration utility, what it is not designed to do, I want to make this clear, it is not a replacement for the JSS to JSS plugin that Jamf offers. If you need ongoing replication, check that out. And it's definitely not a replacement for your JSS backups. You have to keep doing them however you're doing them now. What it is designed for is migrating one JSS to another, possibly from one domain to another, spinning up test environments of your production environment. I've even used it to migrate to the cloud, to test our production environment in the cloud. But the use case that gave birth, the real world use case that gave birth to the utility was that we needed to upgrade our infrastructure. I'm sure a lot of you have been there. We were on one server that was chugging along, one Windows VM that had suffered some pretty nasty outages, and the database was just crufty beyond repair. When we restored it to the new setup, computers wouldn't enroll right. We had all kinds of problems. Jamf support made a valiant effort trying to help us, but to no avail. So we were left with a choice. We could either rebuild our entire JSS from scratch, which we have pretty big JSS, and that means we're creating every single smart group by hand, every single policy by hand, and I just didn't think it was fair to do that to our guys. So instead, looked into the API and see how we could use that to move things over. So that's how it started. The basic concept, you stand up a new clean JSS, you do the very basic setup. You do your Apple push certs, your Tomcat cert, like you were setting up a JSS for the first time. And then you use the utility to move the administrative resources like your smart computer group logic, your policies, all things of that nature over with the API. Computers are not migrated, and this is on purpose. When computers migrate, well, actually, I'll get that on that next slide. Computers are instructed to enroll in the new JSS via policy from the old JSS. So once you have your new JSS totally set up and you test it, the cool thing is you get to test it in production. You test, 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 and once you're sure it's ready to go and everything is working perfect, you set up a policy on your old JSS to have computers enroll into the new JSS. So why we're not migrating computers, in our experience, when computers would enroll, they would not join the existing computer object that was already there. You get duplicates, you get smart computer logic mess, big time. I talked a little bit more with Nick about this, and he explained the details of what's going on behind the scenes to make that happen, but that's kind of on purpose for security reasons with it being a trusted device and stuff. In our case, we wanted a clean JSS. We didn't want to bring all over the bad stuff from our old JSS, so we wanted the computers to come in clean. So the result after running the utility, you end up with a corrupt-free JSS, and you have fresh indexes, your database is clean, and you just have your admin resources. These are the ones that are supported now in the green ink. And I'd definitely like to bring more. I'm working on sites right now. When I did it at the time, we didn't need to migrate sites, but I'm sure a lot of you would need sites with your migration. The basic workflow of the utility is for each resource, we simply generate a plain ID list. We run a for loop on it, and we download an XML file from the source JSS, then we parse it locally. Then the script pauses and gives you the option if you want to mess around with the XML, maybe do a batch change, maybe change something that you didn't want on your new JSS that was on your old JSS. You can do your own magic there to batch change all your XML if you want, or you can just proceed and upload it to the new server. You'll also, at that point, you'll also get a warning if there's things you need to be aware of. Like, for example, when we migrate the LDAP server connection, everything migrates fine with it. All the information about your AD or your Open Directory gets over, but except the password, because the password is stored in a separate place. So once that migrates, you have to go in and manually add the password in the Tomcat web app, like you would if you were setting up the LDAP password the first time. But you get that warning to remind you, don't forget to do that. And you'll see this in the video demo too. So what exactly are we parsing when we do the parsing? First of all, we remove all references to IDs. This is really important because you'll get mismatch errors if you don't. If you post a resource and you specify the ID of that resource, the JSS will just ignore it and assign the next ID that's available to it. But if you post resources that references an ID in an array of that resource, you'll get a mismatch and it won't post at all. And I'll give you an example of this. Slide. Wrong button. Hand slips. So here's an example. So in this example of this category, if you try to post this XML, it actually will post, because the JSS will just ignore that ID, and it'll assign it the next available ID anyway. But if you try to post a policy like this, where the category is in the policy resource, but there's an ID with it, it will try to match on that ID. And you don't want that, because chances are that ID isn't even going to be in your new JSS. And if it is, it's probably the wrong category anyway. So once you remove that ID line from it, it forces the API to match on the name instead, and then it posts successfully. So what else are we parsing? There's a few examples. For accounts, we have to separate users from groups, because the users have to go up first before the groups. Otherwise, groups will fail to post. And then a bunch of them, we strip out the entire computer array. I don't know if you've ever looked at like a smart computer group. Even though it's a smart computer group and it's based on logic, the API, the resource in the API will show you this long list of computers that belong to that smart computer group. So we just cut the entire thing out. Another example is file share distribution points. So we have to strip out failover points, and you have to go add them manually later, because otherwise you have to post them in the exact right order to get it right. And if you have a complicated setup, that's almost impossible to pull off. As our utility runs, it creates a scratch directory, so it can work with all the files locally, and you can save them too. Each time the script kicks off, if it finds a scratch directory folder there, it will archive it for you. Each resource kind of looks like that LDAP server resource, where you have an ID list, which is just your plain list of numbers, and then you have your raw fetched XML, and then the parsed XML. And the parsed XML is what ends up getting uploaded to the new server. The utility is a bash script. It's interactive, it's menu driven, so you don't have to be a real nerdy command line person to use it. And eventually I could totally see this turning into something much cooler with an app around it, or something like that. I know there's a lot of talent out here that might be able to help pull that off. So when we look at this, it's really, really important to go in the right order, because some resources rely on other resources. So if you try to post a policy that references, that's scoped to a group, if the group isn't there first, the policy won't post, because the policy is, the resource is trying to match on the smart computer group or static computer group, and it will fail. So this order is set up very purposefully to make sure it goes logically. So I'm gonna do a video demo, a little bit about the video demo. It is running all on local VMs, but you know what? When you see it, you think, well, that's going fast because it's local VMs. In truth, though, it's not much faster than it was on a real live network. I mean, it all depends on your network speed, but the amount of data you're transferring is really not that much, so it does go pretty quick. I have to point out for our friends in legal that there is no production data from any real JSS in this. When I sat down to create a fake JSS, I don't know if you've ever done that in your spare time, but when I sat down to do that, my kids were watching, I think it was Iron Man 2 on TV, so I just used a Marvel Comics theme to make it abundantly clear that this is completely fake. The scripts and the EAs that are in here, the extension attributes, are stuff that you can get on Jamf Nation. I just randomly picked scripts that were posted there. So with that, the video demo. So we have two JSSs. We have one that has stuff, and we have one that's empty. As we kick off the utility, we'll be asked to do our initial authentication, and you can do an optional credential check. And the credential check just makes sure that you can read from your source JSS, and you can post to your destination JSS. And what it does is it just creates a mock category in your destination. So we refresh the page, and there's our mock category with a timestamp on it, and we can just delete that and proceed. So next we move categories over, so we select categories, and it will download the XML, and it will pause and say, do you want to continue, or do you want to edit your XML? And you refresh the page, and you'll see the categories come right in. So we'll move on to the next resource, LDAP Servers. This is the one I was telling you about earlier. So we move LDAP Servers. It downloads the XML, and you get this warning. Passwords for authenticating to your LDAP will not be included. You need to enter them in the web app. So you proceed, you refresh the page, and there's your LDAP server. And you click on it, and you'll see the password isn't there. Everything else is there, but the password's not there. So we're going to put in the password so we can actually talk to our LDAP. So we save that, And we get the annoying Safari prompt. And we're going to look up a username, Ironman, and yeah, he's there. And we're going to even do some more testing. Let's see if Hulk is a member of the Heroes group. I'm really not that big of a Marvel nerd, I swear. I just had to do something fake, so this is what I did. So you can see as we go ahead and proceed to migrate accounts, we'll generate a list of user IDs and we'll generate a list of group IDs. And this gives you the warning about your LDAP accounts will work right away, but your standard accounts won't because you have to enter the password. So here's an example. I can go in and I can edit the XML. So I'm going to find in the new server, there's already a JSS admin account. So I'm just going to rename it to JSS admin 2, save it, and upload. Go refresh the page. There's all my accounts and groups. And there's my JSS admin 2 as well. So we'll log out, and we'll log back in. I think I'm going to log in as Hulk. Yeah, Hulk. And you'll see that I'm going to get right in. So it just works. Proceed to buildings. Another example of how you can edit the XML. So we'll download the XML from the source. We'll pause. We'll go in and we'll just randomly pick one of them. Go into the parsed XML folder. And what did I randomly pick? I just duplicated it, renamed it to something unique. I'm going to pull up the file. And it's the Shield Helicarrier. So we're going to do a Shield Helicarrier 2. I don't know if they have more than one, but we're going to make one. So we're going to save that, and we're going to proceed to upload. And we're going to flip over and refresh the page, and you'll see the buildings come right in. I'm not going to demonstrate every single resource, but I'm selecting a few here and there. Extension attributes. Believe it or not, there was no special parsing that had to be done for EAs. I was blown away by that. I couldn't believe that the script formatting came in completely clean. The metadata was all there. Look at that, script format is there and everything. I was really amazed by that. That's just the API doing its thing. That's nothing special that I did, just uploading XML. Same with scripts. Downloads them. We continue, refresh the page, and you'll see the scripts coming in. And again, all the formatting is there. Is that one of yours, Nick? I think so. Directory bindings. Here's another example of where there's something special you have to do. So it'll download your XML. You get your warning about the password for your binding account won't be there. So when we upload, refresh the page, there it is, the Active Directory. And everything is there for that resource except the password. So you just enter that in, and that's good to go. File share distribution points, same thing. Download, you get a warning, failover settings won't be there, and your passwords for your Casper Read and Casper Admin accounts won't be there either. So you accept the warning, and you move on. Refresh the page, and you'll see your file share DPs there. Network segments, nothing special there. You just, it just downloads and uploads for network segments. But all these resources just work with the API. OS 10 configuration profiles, that one really surprised me too, that they worked. I thought for sure because they were signed and they're kind of special. I didn't think that they would work, but they did too. You just refresh the page and they're all there. They'll be signed with the certificate from the new JSS. Policies, that gives you a pretty substantial warning. One is that unfortunately we cannot move your self-service icons. We'll talk a little bit about that later, but that's one thing that the API, at least that I know of, can't move. If you guys know how to, you can talk about that in a minute, but I haven't been able to figure that out. So there's your self-service policy that was migrated over, and the icon's missing, but everything else is there. Your scoping is there, everything else is there. So the script is available on GitHub. There'll be a link posted at the end where you can see that. Love to have people join and collaborate and expand it into something even better. So what about the remaining stuff? I mean, it was great that all that stuff moved over, but now, well, in our case, a couple things were really kind of a pain. First of all, we have tons of self-service policies, so all those icons were missing. Secondly, static group membership. So if we're not moving computers over, what do we do about static groups? So for self-service icons, I'm going to demo a really quick script that's available on the same GitHub repo. Which just downloads the icons from the old JSS. Unfortunately, you have to manually upload them to the new one. But the cool thing about the script is that, I don't know about you guys, but when we've created self-service policies over the years, we end up with duplicates in there, and some are slightly different than the others, but they'll have the same name, and they might have different resolutions or what have you. So I made sure that it gets every single unique version of that icon when it downloads. And then when it fully downloads at the end, you even have an option to rename the files with the resolution in parentheses, so you can more easily identify your higher res versus your lower res. And I'm just using MDLS to do that. So this is what that script looks like. You put your credentials in. It archives your previous icon directory if you had it. It brings them all down, and it asks you if you want to rename the files with the file size. And I'm going to say yes, and you'll see there's the original files, and you'll see them get renamed with the resolution tag at the end. And that way you can find your icons and upload them to the new JSS. I'd love to find a better way to make that easier, but we'll see what happens with that. So then for static computer groups, I developed two scripts for this. So well, we had a lot of static computer groups, and some of them were nested within smart computer groups, like I'm sure a lot of you do. And I didn't want to have to recreate that, especially, I didn't want to have somebody just sit there and watch the JSS. Oh, this computer enrolled. Which static groups were he in? Was this one in? Let me put him back in. That'd be totally unfeasible. So I had to figure out a way to get them back into their computer groups, their static groups on enrollment. So the first script, all it does is generate a comma-separated list from the source JSS of serial number, comma, static group, serial number, comma, static group. And then what you do is you just grab that entire list and you paste it into the second script. The second script you run on the new JSS as computers enroll, so you do it a once per computer on enroll policy, and it'll check itself against that list and see which groups it needs to put it in, and it'll use API credentials that are stored in the parameters of the script to move the computer into the group. So I don't have a video demo of this. It didn't really lean itself to that, but the static group that gets, the list that gets created looks like this. It's just a list that's serial number, comma, static group. And then when the magic happens, it just runs a for loop that says, what's my serial number? For that serial number, is it in one of these groups? If yes, put me in, and then the XML looks like this that actually gets posted. Adding a computer to a static group with the API is actually pretty easy. It's just getting the logic behind it first to know what group to join that's a little bit more tricky. Bryson was showing me just a minute ago, he has a new script that is very similar to this that's very cool too, so I would check that out as well. So lessons learned, and a few best practices coding API in Bash. When I first started, I wasn't, I could script Bash fine, but I wasn't really familiar with parsing XML, the JSS API. Bryson's page helped out a lot with that. Use XML lint to format, pipe your output to that. Otherwise, you get a really super long one-line glob of XML that's impossible to work with. And then you can use your traditional text editing on top of that much more easily with your grep v's and your awks and your seds. And then obviously just test and test and test. Don't ever try API stuff that you haven't tested on a live JSS that's in production use, especially if you have write access with those API credentials. In fact, when you run the JSS migration utility, it's the best practice to use a read-only account for your source and a full access account for your destination JSS, just to make sure you don't accidentally screw up your live production JSS. Don't be intimidated by curl. When I first pulled up the man page for curl, I was like, oh my gosh. I was very, very intimidated by it. But there's really only 3 things you do with it with the API. You do a post, a put, and a get, and it's really not that hard to do, so don't be intimidated by it. And many times you just gotta test your variables and see which ones need to be wrapped in quotes, because sometimes they don't, doesn't work right if it's quoted, sometimes it doesn't work right if it is quoted, so you just have to test that and make sure that works. So the new GitHub repo is here. I'd love people to contribute to this and the other scripts that are on there. And you're welcome to try this out. Maybe you want to use it just to try moving your prod to, maybe you want to test a beta of the new JSS, but you don't want to do a database restore. You can use this to kind of spin up your environment on a test JSS and test out the new new version. The one thing about versions is you want to make sure that your destination is equal or a newer version of the JSS than your source. With that, question and answer time, and I'm lucky to have Nick from Jamf and Bryson from Jamf to help. If there's any API questions that you have that aren't related to my utility, they're here to help out with that. So, any questions? Yes. Because I don't know it. It should be Python. I admit that. I talked to Bryson a little bit about that too. I even thought, well, when I started it, I was kind of in a hurry to do it. And it was one of those things that got halfway through, and I realized, this really should be in Python. I really should take the time to brush up and do it in Python. But it wasn't too much of a deadline. I had to get it done. I even thought about doing Python functions within, doing all the interactive stuff in Bash maybe, and then Python functions for the XML stuff. Probably could have made sense as well. But yeah, it probably does lend itself better to Python. But you kind of do what you know. Thanks. It was about 20 minutes, and 15, 20 minutes. And it was, at the time, guys, what do you think, 2,500, 2,000 computer? Yeah, I think 15 minutes might be over exaggerating. The longest part was downloading from the old JSS, the computer groups, because it had all the computer information in it. It had to be stripped out. But uploading was boom, 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 really fast. So the utility itself about 15 minutes. But then going back in by hand and adding the icons back into your self-service policies, that took a while. That did take a while.
Follow up to that. How many times did you actually run that before you trusted
About 40. But I also did, we were testing Jamf Cloud, and I use it to go from our production to Jamf Cloud too. We haven't been able to go forward with Jamf Cloud yet. Hopefully that will change, but so it'll work for that as well. File vault is not one of the things that we have, and I don't think there's a way to do that with the API that I can think of. So you would have to have, we're not using it to manage file vault yet. You would have to have some kind of policy set up for on enroll to do a key refresh. I'm sorry, I'm not very good at this. Go ahead. Hey, Rich. Did everyone hear that? Rich, the file vault expert, basically said Jamf has a article on how the file vault keys are stored in the database, and they're really not designed to come out, which is a good thing. You want it that way. Yeah.
So did your script, and I know you skipped some steps, was there any step in there that migrates the certificates and other high security settings from that JSS to the target, or do you have to do that part?
The question was about certificates. So there's all kinds of different certificates I'm sure you're talking about. For instance, the Tomcat cert, no, I don't want to move that. I wanted a new one because we had a new server on a new domain. The old server was running on an old internal domain that IT had said no more on that domain. We need to go to a new domain. So we needed all the new certs to match that new environment anyway. So for our case, we didn't want to move that. I don't think there would, I can't think of a way that you could do that with the API as well.
What does your JSS feel now?
Nice. I tell you, go from a single Windows VM that is bloated down with all of IT's junk into multiple Red Hat VMs. Oh my gosh, a world of difference. So much faster. So better for and most important, better for the users. Self-service was quicker and more responsive. It was nice for us too, but most importantly, it was way better for the users.
Sorry, two questions, one for you, one maybe for the Jamf. Did you lose, when you created your policy to re-enroll the machines again, did you lose any in that time, and how did you check?
The question was, did we lose any machines from the enroll to the new server? Believe it or not, we did this in March, and we still have the policy running on the old server to move machines that might, we have people that put them away in closets, and they sit there for months and months and months. But I don't have this on GitHub, but I did make another script that did a comparison of which computers were in which JSS. And I could, and I basically make a static group in the old JSS of ones that successfully moved to the new one, and then I could delete them, and I could see how many are remaining. And I think we're down to only like a dozen that have actually not moved over, so.
The second question regarding, we were having trouble trying to access certain fields, like the MDM Users field and one or two others as part of the API. Are those not accessible for a reason, or is that just oversight?
The question was, there were certain fields about like MDM users and some other ones that they weren't able to access through the API. Nick? Bryson?
All right, yeah, so for certain things on records like MDM Enabled Users, that's what you're asking about, those are not in the API to my knowledge. Yeah. As far as reasoning, I'm not sure about that. Yeah, take that one.
There's probably not an intentional reason for that. We're actually kind of going through right now and doing a review of some of those fields that might not be on a computer or on a mobile device when you read it from the API, so it's not intentional. On those, just let us know and we'll get a feature request in to add them to the object.
I see one in the back there. Oh, sorry. I'll get you in a second. There's a guy back here. Go ahead. Yeah.
Did you have to make sure that you'd updated the SSL versions on your machine that's running the scripts if you've tightened up the ciphers on the JSS?
The question was about SSL and ciphers on the JSS. When we did this live, it was before the big recent change about that. But I will confess, my code right now, all the curl commands are with the -K switch, which means it ignores any kind of SSL vulnerability it might find. I want to write an option in where when you first put your credentials in, it asks you, do you want to do this secure or non-secure? And then it will just set a variable for the curl command that it's going to use and use that throughout the rest of the script. So that is something I want to add is better security in for it. But for our big production move, it was all internal, so I didn't really have to worry about it that much. If we were moving to the cloud for real, I would definitely want to do it securely. The guy up here?
I saw you had an option to upload files locally instead of going from a JSS to the
Yes, I didn't. Yeah, there's a manual option there. So if you want to try one of the resources that aren't listed there, you can either create your XML by hand, or you can download it manually and then save it all locally, make your adjustments where you need, and then just use that feature to upload it to the new one. That would be a good option to have. That would be easy to do. Yeah, but there isn't now. That'd be very easy to do though. So. Travis, can you do me a favor and note that down? Because I can't take notes right. Thank you very much. Anybody else? Yeah. Oh, I think that was just a head scratch. Here we go.
So if I understand this correctly, you can run the script on any machine, doesn't need to be a machine JSS is hosted on?
Correct. Yeah, it's designed to run on an OS 10 Mac. Yeah, exactly. Correct. Yep. And it doesn't matter platform to platform. Version to version only matters. You got to be going uphill, or level. And the reason for that is there could be new features in the newer version that the older version wouldn't be aware of. So you might have arrays in your XML that the older version would say, I don't know what this is. I'm not gonna let you post it. Yeah.
Someone who did upgrade or migrate JSSs manually, thank you for this utility. How long, or is this whole process, how long did it take for you to get folks off of the old JSS onto the new one?
So the question was, how long did it take to get old folks from, I said old folks, I didn't mean to do that. How long did it take to get people off the old JSS to the new JSS? I would say we were probably 90% within a few days. I mean, it went quick. Now we did at first, like the first day, we would turn it on network segment at a time, just so, as they were coming in, we would have an opportunity if something went wrong. We could say, well, we all know they're in this building right next to us, and we don't have to travel 1,000 miles to see them. So we did use a little care when we did that. And again, just remember, I'm talking about the policy that we ran on the old JSS to enroll computers into the new one. So we did do that carefully the first couple of days, but once everything was working fine, we was like, let it go. So, yeah.
Is there a reason you wouldn't want to run this routinely just to have a backup copy of the policy? If you wanted to just restore single policy?
That's a good question. So he asked, is there a reason you want, basically, I stated in my presentation it's not a replacement for backup. And he's saying, well, couldn't you kind of use it for backup to keep copies of your policies? I guess, yes, the answer is yes, but you just need to be aware that that's not really a backup, you know? Right, right. Or I could even see instances where, now you'd have to be really, really, really careful with this, but I could even see instances where, like an integrator, I've never worked as a Jamf integrator, so I could be way off base here, but I could see instances where an integrator might even want to use some things he helped one customer at another customer and do that way. And in that case, the gentleman's idea to have a manual download option would be kind of cool for that, because then you could do the manual download and save it and look through it very carefully and make sure you're not bringing one company's information over to another. But with the types of resources we're talking about, most of it's not, you know, company specific. I mean, some of it, like configuration profiles, are very critical, but things like categories or policies, you know, a lot of times that's not the case, so. Scripts, yep. So you can pick and choose which ones you do. You don't have to do the whole thing. No. The question is, does this migrate policy logs and usage data? No, nope. What's that?
So all the run once policies would end up running?
So all the run once policies would run again. Technically, that's true. We don't really use that a lot. We try to really rely on smart computer group logic to run our policies. We don't do a lot of that. That's a good point. If you are doing a lot of run once policies, that is true that they would run again. Oh, wow, that's hard to see. Yeah.
Do you use configuration profiles for your Wi-Fi? How does that work?
We don't. You know, I would love to. The question was, do we use configuration profiles for our Wi-Fi? We don't at this point. You know what? I'd love to test this on that. I'm wondering how that would work. I'm kind of thinking it wouldn't, but I'm not sure. Bryson says it would work.
No, it definitely doesn't. No, but your problem is the moment that you move them from one JSS to the other, they lose their Wi-Fi connection and they can't enroll to the new location.
Oh, no, I don't think that was the, oh, I see what you're saying. I get what you're saying.
You have to create an intermediary network and then manually push a profile down.
I think you're talking about two things. I think he's talking about, would the configuration profile even work to give you a Wi-Fi? And Bryson's saying yes. But you're saying in some environments, as you transition, you could very likely lose your connection to the network. So, right. So it's definitely something you have to play with. You have to, you know, encourage you to look at the code yourselves. If you definitely welcome suggestions if you don't want to contribute to code, but you have suggestions for making it better, definitely welcome that as well.
So are you using this in a dev environment to replicate your prod data?
Yeah, definitely. The question was, are we using it in a dev environment to replicate our prod data? Yeah, I just did it the other day. Trying to remember what we were working. Oh, I won't get into detail. I can't get into the details, but yeah, I just used it the other day, and for that very reason.
Do you feel like that replicates your live environment?
Yeah, and the cool thing about that, just a second, Reg, I'll get right to you. The cool thing about that, when you go to from your prod to your dev, you don't really care about self-service icons when you're just messing around with seeing if things work. So, you know, you get a close enough representation that you can work with it. Rich?
So going back to the whole moving from prod to test, as I understand it, this is designed for basically you load up the test server, you're starting from scratch, and then you move this stuff over.
Yep.
Is it possible to adapt what you're doing in terms of I want to keep my test continually updated against what's in production?
So he's asking, could you use it? It's really designed to be a run once migration from prod to test. And Rich is saying, could you use it to go ongoing to test? Technically, yeah, you're going to get a ton of errors as you go down because it's not going to be able to update. It could post new things that aren't in the test, but it won't be able to update existing things. So with a lot of work, it could probably make it do that, but that's not what it's designed for. Thought somebody here, no? Yeah. What's that? Oh, okay, back here? You asked about VPP tokens. No, I don't think you could do that through the API. My script doesn't do it. I don't think there's even a resource for that, if I remember right. No, I think that's one thing you'd have to do manually. It's really the resources that I concentrated on were the ones that would take forever to do by hand. So if you have tons of policies, this really helps with that. If you have tons of configuration profiles, this really helps with that. For things like, I even do the resources for like LDAP accounts, and you probably only have one or two of those anyway, but it's still convenient to have. But some of the other stuff like I just didn't concentrate on because it wasn't either important to us at the time or it wasn't that hard to do by hand.
Just as a follow-up to that DPVPP, if you have the same token in two separate servers at the same time, you get some very funny behaviors. So you don't ever want to have your DP token, like the exact same one, in two locations at once. The same thing with the DPP.
So we just had a comment, if you couldn't hear, if you have your DEP and VPP tokens in two different servers at the same time, you have problems. Anyone from Apple want to address that? No? Okay. But there was a lot of head nodding when he said that, so I assume that that's true. Go ahead. I see it.
So on our other test environment, we just kind of set it up by hand, but if we wanted to blow that away, this seems very great. Of course, we don't want to bring our test computers over. So in your migration script, as long as we skipped some of the things but went in order from first to last, and just skipped a couple things, that's going to be obviously just fine.
Yep. Yeah, as long as you go in the right order. Now, if you skip categories, but then you try to move a package that references that category, it's going to fail. So you just have to make sure you know your own contingencies. Yep. Yeah, this is the hardest part, seeing raised hands, I swear, with those lights. Oh, there you are. He said he just looked at the API documentation. I guess he stumped you guys. Said, oh, maybe it's new.
Now, is that just the account information, or do you see the token in the XML?
But even that would be helpful, right? I mean,
That's fantastic and dangerous. Hello? As the gentleman over here said, if you have your VPP token in two places at the same time, you're going to have a bad time. We went through that once.
wow. Sorry for some of the ignorance on VPP in depth. We have not fully gotten there yet. We're this close. So, and Matt's been our expert on that anyway. So, sorry about not knowing all those answers for you. Yeah. So, Oh, man, wow. The question was timelines on getting sites in. I think I could do it pretty quickly. It's just the testing that's probably going to take longer to see how it works. I can shoot for the next month though, because we need it. We need it too. We're going to have sites soon, and we're going to need it. See hand. Just yell. I think that might be it. Well, thank you everyone for coming. We really appreciate it. Have a great JNUC.